Well, hello and welcome, AP Psychers. We're going to go over topic 5.7 from the College Board today. This topic is an introduction to thinking, and then we get into problem solving. So kind of an introduction to cognition in general. We want to identify some problem solving strategies by the time we are done today and give the characteristics of creative thought and thinkers. We'll cover these terms. And then be careful because with inside heuristics, there are 4 things that we really have to know that are big terms as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. For our unit, we're studying cognition. We just came out of a section on memory, which is definitely part of cognition. But just so you reorient yourself, cognition is defined as just thinking. It's a process that is purposeful usually. You saw that sometimes it's automatic in memory. But cognition itself is usually purposeful thinking. Trying to remember, problem solve, or communicate. It's going to involve these 6 concepts. So today we're looking at concepts or schema. Problem solving, decision making is going to form the basis of our week this week. Language will form the basis of our week next week. And we already did memories. These are all things involved in cognitive psychology. The building block of all cognition is schema. And we've talked about this a lot in this class. My metaphor for schema is a Tupperware container. So here you've got this pantry that's all laid out. All of the type of cereal is over here in this Tupperware container, and it's all in one group. And then there's like a grouping of, okay, here's our snacks in one area and our box things in another. Schemas are mental groupings that we've formed from experiences that we use to organize our mental world. We have schemas for everything. We have these Tupperware containers. They form, the definition is that 3-part definition, mental grouping formed from experience that we use to organize our mental world. So that's a chair that you see that you've put that into your Tupperware container of chair. We've done this a couple of times together. You also call that a chair, and you call this a chair as well. They don't share a whole lot of things, except they have some key characteristics. It's a seat that has enough legs to support it, right? It's got a back and it sits one person. It doesn't matter if it's cushioned or made of wood. That's kind of extemporaneous. There are certain characteristics that make it a chair that allow us to put it into that schema. We also organize our schemas into hierarchies. Here you see a graphic of all the different things that the huge corporation of Walt Disney World owns. And so we've got a schema of Marvel and Marvel movies. Even if you haven't kind of seen a Marvel movie, you might have a mental grouping for what goes in that, some Iron Man stuff, some Hulk, some Spider-Man. So you've got a grouping of that. You also have the fact that they own theme parks. And this is like a layout of the hierarchy of Disney. So we organize our schema into categories. You've got Marvel movies, which would be a smaller schema inside the larger thing of Marvel, which is a schema inside a larger thing of Disney. So we organize our schema into these layers called hierarchies. Schemata, which is the plural, can get fuzzy. So is a whale a mammal? Yeah, technically we know the definition is a mammal, but it doesn't really fit. So it's not the first thing we think of when I say mammal to you. I don't say a bird and you immediately think of penguins. Yes, technically they are, but they are kind of on the peripheral edge of your schema. To kind of show you how if you have a peripheral edge of your schema, you probably also have like a center dead point of your schema. Just answer these questions to yourself as we go through them. Think of a triangle or draw one. What's the first motor vehicle that comes to your mind? Go ahead and in your mind, just write a sentence. Name a hero, any hero, just the first thing you think of. Describe a heroic act. In your head, think about it. Give me a game. Now, if your picture or what you were thinking of for a triangle was equilateral triangle, but you thought of a car for your motor vehicle, I bet you wrote a short declarative sentence and not a question. I bet you thought Superman, Batman, fireman, considering what just came out, maybe Spider-Man. Unfortunately, I bet your single act, think about it, see if it was gendered. Was it done by a male? And were you thinking of Monopoly or some other board game? Now, if I hit on a couple of these, the reason I did is because your examples here, the equilateral triangle, a car, a short declarative sentence, the Superman as a hero, our gendered patriarchy of thinking of a male as a heroic act. All of these things are prototypes. Now, prototype is the best example or cognitive representation of something with a certain schema. So I might say dog is a schema. There's lots of different dogs that can fall into that, right? There's everything from Chihuahuas to golden retrievers. But to me, the best example of a dog, the most dog is a golden retriever. It's just kind of like the most quintessential, best example that embodies that schema. Just like a cardinal might be your prototype of a bird, and kiwis or penguins really aren't. So schemas are the categories, and prototypes are a specific example that you think best represents that category. Now, if we were to apply this to colleges, like I'm going to be asking you to do during this unit, a schema of college might be all the things that you think go into colleges. There's a quad, there's a grassy area, people are playing frisbee, there's lecture halls, there's dorms, there's all these different things that professors, maybe there's, all these things that are going to your schema of college. A prototype is your specific college that best fits that. So if I say college and you say a specific institution like Harvard, Harvard is your prototype. All the characteristics are your schema. It alters memory. We've talked about this. Once we place an item, we take it, we plop it into a schema. It then changes our memory towards the polar end of that schema. So a computer-generated face that was 70% Caucasian, they took a face of two different people with two different backgrounds, and they blended them using a computer. And once people put that face into one schema, they then remembered it as the far end of the schema. So a computer-generated face that was 70% between the Caucasian and AAPI individual, they then, if people placed it in the Caucasian bin, they then remembered it more. So I think that kind of shows us the dangerous power of our schemas, and then especially dangerous when applied to individuals, right? We've talked about this. So if we've got schema, the other thing we want to talk about is creativity. Creativity is defined as original thought. By psychologists, you can differ on your agreement of this. Original thought, it can be an obvious extension. It can't just be an obvious extension of others' work that is both functional and valuable. And so I bring up the picture of Duchamp's The Fountain. So yes, that's a urinal turned on its side as art. Maybe not an obvious extension of another's work. So someone made the urinal, but putting it on a pedestal as a symbol of the meaninglessness of life during Dadaism, I find functional and valuable. Interesting statement about our condition. Maybe you don't. But that is our definition of creativity, functional and valuable. I wanted to show you that it could be extended to even what you might question as art. But creativity, and it's not just an obvious extension. That's how we'll define it in psychology. It is powered by two things that we look at. And those two things are divergent and convergent thinking. Think of this as the gasoline behind creativity. Divergent thinking is having a question or a problem and thinking of lots of different solutions to that problem. Do you know who's really good at divergent thinking? Kindergarten students. You can give them one thing and they'll think many, many different possibilities for that one thing. Very creative. My little pre-kindergartner here is home with me today. That is one of the reasons I am home. And he'll give you lots of good options. And some of them are going to be crazy, but it's going to be very creative, very divergent in his thinking. Another really important tool for creativity is convergent thinking. So this one converges, the other one diverges. So when we do convergent thinking, bringing together different ideas from different participants to determine one single one. So if you're someone who in group work is able to bring ideas from lots of different people and then help put those together, that's convergent thinking. That's a form of creativity as well. A little sad note here, people that score really bad on divergent thinking, high school students. And the thinking might be that public education has beaten part of that creativity out of you as we've worksheeted you to death. So just kind of kind of think about that, maybe it's time to go beyond those worksheets and allow ourselves to do more divergent thinking. Metacognition. This one's not your text, but it's important to know. It's a really simple definition. It's just thinking about your own thinking. It's literally what we are doing right now. We are thinking about our own thinking. Metacognition is one of the most important things you can do for skill development. So thinking about your writing and your thinking in your writing, thinking about how you are studying, all of that is metacognition. Okay, so now we've got schema and prototypes and creativity, all the basic building blocks of thought down a little bit. Now we want to transition over to the types of things that we do when we engage in problem solving. So problem solving has 4 steps. First, you have to define the problem. If you don't define the problem correctly, all the rest of the steps are going to be really, really difficult. Once you've defined what the problem is, you have to use that definition to decide what category a problem belongs to. And then based on that, you want to select a solution strategy, step number 3, that would help you solve that problem. And then step number 4, you evaluate progress towards that goal. If you want to think about problem solving steps, think about picking what you want to do next to your seniors. So is it go to college, go to career? What college do you go to? I know a lot of you are headed towards college. So what kind of problem is that? Is that just an academic problem? No, it's a financial problem. Is it just a financial problem? No, it's a social problem too. So if I define it the wrong way, if I don't define it as a financial problem, then when I start to decide what category it belongs to, so if my problem is just find the perfect college, and then I don't apply the financial part to that, well, then it's going to be problematic, right? Because then I'm not going to select a solution strategy that looks at the financial feasibility of it. So if I don't define it in the right way and associate it to the right category of problems, my solution strategy here isn't going to be effective. So those are the 4 steps of problem solving. Now, there are 2 major ways that you can go about problem solving. The first is an algorithm. You probably most associate that with math class. An algorithm is a step-by-step method that guarantees a solution, kind of like a proof in geometry. It is slow, but guaranteed. Okay, so the bad thing is it's slow, the good thing is it's guaranteed. But if it's slow, you already know that we as humans are cognitive misers. We don't like thinking. So we probably don't use that very often. So yes, it's guaranteed a solution, not very effective. So we end up using this one down here. We use heuristics. This is going to be a word we use an awful lot this unit. Heuristics are shortcuts. They're rules of thumb that help simplify a problem, and they're quicker. We don't guarantee a solution, but they do allow us to quickly get to a solution most of the time. So if I gave you this for homework tonight, please unscramble this word. I want you to use an algorithm. You'd have to do 907,000 possibilities written out to get to the end. Would you absolutely get a solution? Absolutely. But all of you probably looking at the slide right now have already used a heuristic. You're like, oh, okay, usually when I see Y, it's at the end of the word. I'm watching a psych video, this word psychology. You used that shortcut to get there. The shortcut was called a heuristic. So in psychology, heuristics, again, are simple, efficient rules learned from experience that allow you to make shortcuts when you're facing complex problems. Makes it easier to solve. Most things in life we don't solve with an algorithm. One of our things in this unit 2 is insight. So insight's going to be different than problem solving. Insight occurs when a solution to a problem presents itself quickly and without warning. So you do get to a solution, but it's almost like your brain, remember parallel processing, has done it on its own. So you're not using an algorithm, you're not using heuristics, you've got kind of parallel processing, and all of a sudden it kind of hits you. There's a cool article there if you've ever had an insight in the shower, like an idea in the shower. We've talked about you can do insights or problem solving in dreams as well. But insights are the sudden discovery of a correct solution, an aha moment. Some of you might have had it with a thesis on an essay before, where you're like, oh, this clicks, and now you have it. Most of the times, though, when we have a problem, we have to use heuristics. We have to use shortcuts that are strategies that are going to help us get to the end of our problem. So we're going to look at 4 today. Hill climbing, sub-goals, means-ends analysis, and working backwards. And for each one of these, I'll help show you how it's going to relate to your college application process. So hill climbing. Hill climbing is you move progressively closer to a goal without ever moving backwards. This works really well if you have a small problem. So maybe you get home, you've got like 4 things to do for homework, and you just kind of bang them out. So you keep moving progressively towards the goal without moving backwards. It works really, really well if your problem is small. So for hill climbing, wouldn't advise this for your college application process. Juniors, I mean, seniors, I think you can probably relate to this at this point in time. Hill climbing here, that, all the Common App and all of the essays that you have to write and letters of recommendation you have to get and all these forms, that can seem too immense. So if the hill is really big sometimes, we end up using sub-goals. Sub-goals is a heuristic where we break a large problem into smaller, more manageable ones, each of which is easier to solve. So this is my friends here who make to-do lists. Sometimes you make a to-do list just to cross some things off. Maybe you include a few on there so that you can cross off quickly, you feel accomplished. You're doing little sub-goals along the way to make yourself feel better. Seniors, whenever we talk about this in class, oftentimes you'll look at the juniors and be like, yeah, one of your sub-goals should be to ask for letters of recommendation before you leave your junior year. Get your Common App done in August when it's released. Set all these sub-goals so that you're not trying to do the college application stuff at the same time that you're doing school in September. Doing little things and checking it off your list as you go. Means-ends analysis, this one's a little more complicated. So means-ends analysis is when you look at where you are, you look at where you want to be, and you go, oh no, I've kind of gone off course, and I need to undo some things that I've done to be able to go ahead and make it to my desired destination. So this would be if you've ever written a paper, and then you've gone back and edited it. You had written the paper, you had gotten to the end, but you look at what you have and you look at like maybe the grades you wanted, and you're like, you know what, I need to proofread this, I need to edit it. Another example of means-ends analysis might be that you've written the start of a paper, and you get to the end of that beginning that you've written, and you're like, this is not right. And you restart the assignment. So you're willing to go back, delete what you've written, and restart it. If you like a sports analogy, this is when you pitch around someone. Your goal is to get out of the inning, but you are going to intentionally walk this person because you don't want them to score a run on you. So you're gonna take a step back. You're gonna put them on base because you don't want the end result of them winning and getting a run on you. This is any time that you are willing to go back. This might be in the college application process. If you went ahead and looked at a list initially, and then after you did that, maybe you're like, you know what? I found out about a new college. I'm going to add this college to the list. I found out about a new major. I'm going to go back and make sure the colleges that I'm applying to are good for that major. But the key thing here is you're going to reduce the discrepancy between where you are and where you want to be by being willing to go back and redo some of that work, means-ends analysis. Working backwards are most easy one to understand. Here you just take a look at your desired goal. So here I have 2 of my heroes with Weston and Ansel Adams. So you look at your desired goal. I want to shoot photography that is as talented in its composition as both of these. And so I look at that, I study that, and then I try to bring that into my own work. This would be, I had a student once, and she desperately wanted to go to BU, and she knew that freshman year. And so she designed her course of study based upon what they want. And all of you have kind of done this. You've designed a course of study for yourself based upon what you want that end goal to be, and you've backwards designed some of the classes that you have taken. So that's working backward. So there you have it. We've got some problem-solving steps. Before that, we had some basic building blocks of thought with schema and with creativity. And then our last one is just how we go about changing or altering our schema. And we'll get more into this when we get into developmental psych, but just to throw it out there, Schema was developed by Piaget in terms of how we change for assimilation and accommodation for schema. Assimilation, you incorporate new experiences into an existing schema. So a toddler who has a chocolate lab at home would also incorporate Dalmatians into her schema when she goes over to a friend's house. She already has a chocolate lab. She knows that all of these larger animals with 4 legs are called dogs. And when she goes over to another house, she finds a larger animal with 4 legs. This one's black and white, but she brings it into her mental category of dog. That's called assimilation. Accommodation, notice guys, there's 2 C's right here. Accommodation is when you change. So here, same person has a chocolate lab at home. She goes over to a friend's house. This person has a smaller furry creature with 4 legs. She calls it a dog. It's not, it's a cat. She gets corrected, there's one of the C's. And because of that, she then has to change or accommodate. So now she has to break apart that Tupperware container, and there has to be one for dogs and one for cats. She had to make an accommodation. She had to change. So there's a correction and a change, 2 C's. That's how you can tell them apart. Assimilation, you bring it in. It's the same, see the S. And then accommodation, there's a correction and a change. This allows us to adapt, and that's how we kind of build all of our schemas in the first place. So there you have it, guys, 5.7. Hope that was kind of helpful, especially if you are at home. Finn is coming in here at the very end, so I'm going to log off just in time. Everyone take care. Bye, AP Psychers.